Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. In this series of videos, I'm going to be doing a full build on the team associated RC10 B74.1D. That is the 1/10 scale four-wheel drive buggy. It's a very popular class. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to be running modified. I'd like to run stock, but no one in my area is running that, at least not enough people that they are holding races for that class. So going mod right out of the box. In any event, the D kit is their latest. It's not brand new. It's been out for most of a year now. The D uses a center diff, which is my preference over a slipper clutch, just my taste. I've got a handful of mod parts that I'm going to put in this. I'm going to be lightening it up with some titanium hardware. Got a real hot motor for it, nice speed control, and I'm going to go over all of the things I'm going to be using in the build as well as unboxing it in this video. So let's have a look in the box. Okay, let's start by opening the box. And they give us a nice body. That's really feather light, very thin Lexan. And as we seem to be finding in some of these later generational kits, a lot of what would have been aftermarket modified parts, upgrade parts from the factory are all put into these kits. For example, the nice blue anodized A, B, and C blocks and D blocks. We get the low center version, and we've got a whole bunch of pills to make adjustments to that suspension. Here we have a pair of diffs. These are going to be our front and our rear. Our wing, sway bar kit, some shock and diff fluid, this looks like battery mounting and also some servo mounting hardware. We have a looks like a carbon fiber arm for a floating servo setup. Here we have our bag of shocks, and we've got some more silicone fluids. I'm going to be using my own fluids, but I may use some of those if it's the right weight for the areas I want, but I'm not going to be doing a straight across the board number. I'm going to be working from a build as I usually do. This looks like our rear axles, CV joints, and hubs. And here we have a turnbuckle kit. Front and rear diff housings and bearings, front steering knuckles, and we've got a nice set of aluminum pieces here, and some little carbon fiber brackets. Those are our steering horns. It's nice that they make those out of carbon and then you can replace them with different geometry. Steering rack, looks like they gave us the aluminum steering rack. Some of the parts are plastic, but the main steering rack that swings back and forth and actually has the turnbuckles to control the wheels, that's made out of aluminum. Here is motor mount and center brackets, also front and rear shock towers, all carbon fiber on the shock towers, aluminum on the motor mounts, and center diff mount. More carbon fiber pieces, and that's our center diff with 2 ring gears to choose from. This is the little ball end kit for the front and rear sway bars. And here is our base chassis package. This has our aluminum chassis and the outer rails and some other brackets. And then we have our instruction book and other assorted items. I'm going to go ahead and open this up real quick. Just want to pull out the instructions in case I want to peruse through them. Looks like there's a supplement or a piece that is like an addendum. It's probably just the center diff, and then they would yeah, let's see, setup supplement. So some front steering block adjustments, center diff. The center diff is not at all surprising because some versions of this kit are going to have the slipper. So we got some addendums to shocks, sway bar. They've got us recommending some pretty heavy fluid, 40 and 35. Great, no problem. I'm going to, again, look at the builds that I've been reviewing, and I'll come to a decision on that for my initial setup. No color, everything's in grayscale, but nicely done, good images. One thing I do miss that a lot of other manufacturers do is put a legend on the side where you've actually got a one-to-one drawing of the hardware pieces like screws and such. It makes them very easy to pick out exactly what you need for a given piece. But this is supposed to be a very nice car. It's supposed to be really good handling, very predictable, not as twitchy and wild as the low-C version of this same class vehicle. So I'll just put this aside for now. Get everything boxed back up again, and then I will go over all the goodies that I am going to be adding to this vehicle. Now, you guys know that there are 2 things that I am really big on. The first one is reducing unsprung weight, and number 2 is reducing rotating mass. And I've got several items that are going to really help with both of those. So let's start by looking over the basic electronics. I've got a Trinity motor here. Not going to be using that. That's the sensor, stock sensor wire. This is a RevTech X Factor motor. These are really hot motors. This is a 7-turn motor, and it's the Dakota Fend version. You know, basically they're trying to offer you something that is as close to a racer's, you know, factory racer's motor as possible. So That should be a really hot motor. We'll see how that does. I'll just set that aside. I'm going to be using a different sensor wire. Specifically, this Rude Dog sensor wire. It's a flat cable and 175 millimeters. If you measure out the distance from where the motor's going to lie, there's a cutaway in the center of the chassis that this can lay in, and you can tape it down. If you've seen my TLR 22 DC build, I did that same procedure, and it made for a really clean setup. The sensor wire is as low as can be. It's tucked into a groove in the chassis, out of the way. You don't have to worry about pulling it off accidentally or having it flapping around. Rude Dog Servo. This is the RC 2009. It's a very high-speed servo. It's got good torque. You want to make sure you're getting a good torquey servo for all-wheel drive vehicles, because the torque and power coming through the front drive shafts and the front wheels can have a lot of influence over steering. If you've ever driven a front-wheel drive car and really pushed it, you're familiar with torque steering. So you know, where the front end wants to kind of lead the car around, and kind of almost take the wheel out of your hand. You want a good strong servo, so don't buy cheap. Hobbywing XC Run 10 Pro Elite, 160 amp, nice speed controller. I'm using the exact same speed controller on my upgrade for the 104001 WL Toys car of the same class. That's one of the reasons I'm kind of trying to it's not going to be a complete mirror, because I wasn't going to spend as much on the motor for that car as I did on this. But I've got a decent motor for it, for sure, and I didn't want to skimp on speed control, because at some point I may be done with that WL Toys car and want to pull that speed control out of there. So I thought I'd get another Elite so that I would have one for down the road if I do that. So there's our basic electronics. This is a little kit I like getting. It's for the lower shock mounts, and when you're setting up cars, they have a screw right here to mount the eyelet on the swing arm. I like having these titanium grub screws or studs, and then these aluminum nylon lock nuts, because I find handling a screwdriver or nut driver when it's coming off the right here, it's very close to the chassis. It's hard to get my hands around it and loosen that up without it risking stripping the head of the nut or just being difficult. Whereas with these, you can pop a wrench on it and take the nut off much more easily. And of course, because it is the studs are titanium and the nuts are aluminum, it's a very light solution, and they're not very expensive. So since we've also got front shocks to contend with, I picked up a pair. And if for whatever reason they're not needed up front, I'll have them for some other kit down the road. Now, fan, absolute essential item. This is made by Rocket. It's a 30 millimeter fan, nothing overly special about it. It's a very high RPM fan. That'll come in handy for keeping the motor cool. Rotating mass. Rotating mass is like you're trying to do the opposite of having like a flywheel. You don't want a lot of rotating metal, heavy items that are spinning at high speeds. They can have a lot of undue influence over the vehicle. For example, if you've got some really heavy gear mounted in the center of the vehicle that's spinning perpendicular to the direction of the car, that can have an effect on the vehicle when it's in the air, making the car want to rotate to one side or the other. It also slows down how quickly your overall drivetrain is going to spin up and spin down. That's very important because like when you're trying to brake into a turn, you're braking by slowing down the drivetrain. You're braking with the motor, not some type of physical brake mechanism at the wheels like on a real car. So you've got to think about slowing that whole drivetrain down. I looked, and all the pros are racing with the associated plastic gear set, even in mod class. So A, these plastic gears are very strong. B, the weight savings is worth the risk of gear damage. You can always just replace them. So I got 3 sets, one for the front, one for the center, one for the rear differential. This will take a lot of rotational mass out of the vehicle. Front and rear sway bar kits. Pretty standard thing to get when you're going to race. You want a variety of sizes so you can tune and adjust the vehicle. Some aluminum lock nuts for the car. Some extra low friction X-rings for the shock absorbers. So this is going to go in the spare box. Extra diff kits, rebuild kits, so a pair of O-rings and a paper gasket. So if I take apart a diff to service it, I'm changing the fluid because I want to change how the car's reacting. If there's any damage to the existing gasket or seals, I have the parts to replace them on hand. You always want to get stuff like that. A 25 tooth aluminum servo horn. Nice thing to have. Replace the plastic one. Get rid of any flex in the steering that you can. And let's see. This is a Servo grommet kit. It's basically some aluminum fittings that go into the holes on where you would put like a rubber grommet. It takes any slack out of the mounting. It does come with steel screws. I'll be replacing those with some titanium, but I wanted to get these aluminum pieces. Some aluminum lock nuts for the wheels, nice and light. Probably already has some, but I wanted to be sure. And then we've got some titanium hardware. So a variety of different screw sizes that I ordered from Lunsford. Some of this I already have. Here's another batch of grade 5 billet screws. Titanium ball studs. This can take a decent amount of weight off the car because you're talking 45%, 40% of the weight of the steel components. Likewise with the titanium turnbuckles, you're also shedding a good bit of weight here. And a lot of this is unsprung weight. This is all unsprung weight. Probably 50 to 60% of these are unsprung. So in other words, the ones that are out on the wheels are unsprung. The ones that are on the shock towers or on the steering rack, that is sprung weight. So removing unsprung weight increases how quickly your suspension can react to bumps. That is it for everything that is going to go into this build.